The great hall of the Galactic Council hummed with worried voices. Representatives from a dozen worlds floated, swam, and walked through the massive chamber. The air shimmered with translation fields as different species tried to communicate their fear. Ambassador. Kethnine Resonance stood in the center of the hall. His crystalline body caught the light from 3 suns streaming through the transparent dome above. Usually, the Zephyrian would glow with soft blue patterns that meant peace and happiness. Today, angry red streaks pulsed through his form like lightning. Honored council members, Keth said, his voice creating musical tones that the translators turned into words. My people are dying. Our colonies are gone. The Vorthok swarm has taken 5 of our worlds in less than 2 months. The nebulae representative, a cloud of purple gas contained in a floating sphere, drifted closer. We understand your pain, friend Keth, but what can we do? Our people have never fought in wars. We explore stars and study the beauty of space. We know nothing of battle. Around the hall, other species nodded their agreement. The depths, who lived in the dark oceans of their water worlds, had never needed weapons. The luminance beings made of pure energy spent their time creating art from starlight. The plant-like growthers used their time making gardens on dead worlds. Keth's body flashed brighter red. Then we will all die. The swarm does not stop. They eat everything living and turn it into more soldiers. They have no mercy, no reason. They only hunger. The hall fell silent. Every being there had heard the reports. Entire planets stripped of all life in days. Cities consumed so completely that not even ruins remained. Billions of peaceful creatures turned into biomass to feed the growing army of monsters. Council leader. Vex Prime spoke from the central platform. The ancient being looked like a tree made of silver metal, its branches reaching toward the dome. We have tried to help Kethnine Resonance. Our fastest ships carry refugees from the path of the swarm. Our scientists work day and night to find some way to stop them. But we are not warriors. We have never been warriors. Our weapons are meant for mining asteroids and clearing space debris. Added the Depths representative, her words bubbling through the water in her breathing tank. The few military ships we have are for stopping pirates and smugglers. Nothing like this swarm. Keth's form dimmed with despair. 3 more of his colonies had gone silent just this morning. The swarm was moving faster now, growing stronger with each world they consumed. At this rate, the Zephyrian homeworld would be under attack within 6 months. There must be someone, Keth pleaded. Someone in this galaxy who can fight, who has weapons and soldiers. The council members looked at each other with the universal expression of hopelessness that crossed all species. They had grown comfortable in their peaceful galaxy. Wars were things from ancient history books. Most races had not built a military ship in hundreds of years. In the back of the hall, a small figure raised a tentacle. Junior Clerk Zip 7 worked in the council's records department. Most days, the little creature spent time filing reports and updating databases. Today, something had caught his attention. Honored Council Leader Zip 7 said in a squeaky voice, I may have found something. Vex Prime's metal branches rustled with surprise. Junior clerks rarely spoke during full council sessions. What is it, small one? Zip 7 moved closer, carrying a glowing data pad. While updating our contact records, I found a species that was recently discovered. They call themselves humans. They live on a planet called Earth, in the outer spiral arm. What makes you think they can help? Asked the nebulae representative. Are they an advanced warrior race? Well, no, sir, Zip 7 said, checking his data. They have not even left their own star system yet. But the first contact reports mention that they have something called military experience. The scouts noted that their planet has multiple nations that sometimes fight with each other. Several council members made sounds of disgust. The idea of the same species fighting among themselves was disturbing to most galactic civilizations. They fight their own kind? Vex Prime asked. How barbaric. What else do the reports say? Zip 7 scrolled through his pad. The planet is listed as a Class 12 hostile environment. The scouts had trouble landing because of something called weather systems. There are notes about dangerous native creatures and toxic atmospheric conditions in some areas. A death world. whispered the Depth's representative. They live on a death world. The term sent a chill through the hall. Death worlds were planets so dangerous that most species would die within hours of landing. Only a few planets in the galaxy were classified that way, and they were all considered uninhabitable. If they live on such a world and still survive to fight each other, Keth said slowly, perhaps they know something about conflict that we do not. The reports are incomplete, Zip-7 continued. The first contact team had to leave quickly due to what they called aggressive wildlife. But they did observe that the humans have various weapons and something called standing armies. Vexprim considered this information. The Council had few options. Every military simulation showed the swarm reaching the core worlds within 5 years. After that, galactic civilization would end. These humans might not have much to offer, but they were the only species on record that seemed to have any experience with warfare. How many soldiers do you think they could send? Asked Keth, hope returning to his crystalline form. Zip-7 looked at his data again. The population reports suggest about 8 billion individuals. If they could spare even 1% for military service, that would be 80 million soldiers. The number meant nothing to most council members. The largest military force in recent galactic history had been the quarantine fleet that contained a plague outbreak 50 years ago. That fleet had 3,000 ships and 20,000 personnel. Even if they could only send a few hundred volunteers, it would be more military experience than anyone else can offer, Vex Prime decided. Junior Clerk, Zip-7. Prepare a distress transmission for Earth. Explain our situation and ask for whatever aid they can provide. As the clerk hurried away to prepare the message, Keth felt the first hope he had experienced in months. Perhaps these humans could offer some new ideas. Maybe their experience fighting each other had taught them tactics that could slow down the swarm. Even buying a few more months would allow more refugees to escape. The council session ended with plans to evacuate more worlds and prepare for the worst. No one expected much from the primitive humans on their distant death world. They were asking for help from a species that had not even invented faster than light travel yet. But desperation makes civilizations try anything. The message was sent into space, carrying the coordinates of the threatened worlds and a plea for any assistance Earth could provide. The transmission would take weeks to reach the human system, and weeks more for any response to return. The Galactic Council settled in to wait, hoping that somewhere in the darkness between stars, help was coming. They had no idea what they had just unleashed upon the galaxy. In their peaceful civilization, they could not imagine what 8 billion apex predators might consider a reasonable response to genocide. Message raced through space toward a small blue world where the deadliest species in the galaxy was about to learn that they were not alone in the universe and that someone needed their help. The communication array at Luna Base picked up the alien signal at 0347 hours, Earth Standard Time. The massive dish had been scanning deep space for months, hoping to detect signs of intelligent life. What it found instead was a cry for help from across the galaxy. Admiral Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee in his office when Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park burst through the door without knocking. Her face was pale with excitement and fear. "Sir, you need to see this right now," she said, carrying a data tablet that glowed with translated alien text. Jake set down his coffee and took the tablet. As he read, his expression grew darker with each line. The message spoke of peaceful civilizations being consumed by something called the Vorthok Swarm. Entire worlds stripped of life. Billions dead. A plea for military assistance from anyone who could fight. "How long ago was this sent?" Jake asked. "The computer estimates about 6 weeks, sir. The signal had to travel a long way to reach us." Jake stood up and walked to his window. Outside, he could see the shipyards of Luna Base, where humanity's first interstellar fleet was being built. 300 warships in various stages of completion, the pride of human engineering, designed to explore the stars and defend Earth from whatever might be out there. "Get me Captain Ron Baker and Colonel Amy Ross immediately," Jake ordered. "And wake up Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan on Mars. Tell her we have a situation." Within an hour, the senior staff of the Human Defense Fleet was gathered in the main briefing room. The walls displayed star charts showing the location of the alien transmission and the estimated path of the swarm. Lisa Park stood at the front of the room, her xenobiology training making her the closest thing to an expert on aliens that humanity had. Based on the message, we're dealing with a galactic civilization of peaceful species. They've never encountered anything like this swarm before. Captain Ron Baker, a veteran of the Mars colonial wars, studied the tactical data. These Vorthok things sound like a biological weapon gone wrong. They consume organic matter and convert it into more soldiers. Classic exponential growth scenario. "The aliens are asking for help," Colonel Amy Ross added, her scarred face serious. "They say they have no military experience. None of their species have ever fought wars." Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan, who had rushed from Mars base the moment she received Jake's message, looked around the room. At 60 years old, she had seen humanity's worst conflicts and understood what real war meant. "Gentlemen, ladies," Kate said quietly, "we're looking at genocide on a galactic scale. If this swarm isn't stopped, billions more will die." Jake brought up images from the alien message showing the affected worlds. What had once been green planets were now gray balls of rock stripped of all life. The question is, can we help? "We're talking about distances that would take our fastest ships months to cross." "The new jump drives are ready for testing," Ron said. "We could cut that travel time down 2 weeks if we push the engines hard." Amy was already working on her tablet, running calculations. "If we mobilize the entire fleet, we could deploy 50,000 Marines along with full air and space support. Every ship we have that can fight." The room fell silent. 50,000 troops was nearly the entire human military. It would leave Earth's defenses dangerously thin. Lisa looked up from her analysis of the alien data. "There's something else. The message mentions that other galactic species tried to help but couldn't do much damage to the swarm. Their weapons are designed for mining and construction, not warfare. So they've never seen real military hardware," Ron said with a grin that would have worried anyone who knew him well. "No plasma cannons, no nuclear missiles, no chemical weapons, no Marines trained from birth to kill anything that threatens their people," Amy added. Kate stood up and walked to the star chart. She had spent 30 years preparing humanity for the possibility of alien contact. She had run thousands of scenarios, from peaceful first meetings to full-scale invasion, but she had never considered that aliens might ask humanity for help in a war. "There's something these peaceful aliens don't understand about us," Kate said slowly. "They think they're asking for help from another civilized species. They don't know they just contacted a planet full of apex predators." Jake nodded grimly. "Earth isn't just our home. It's a death world. Everything here evolved to kill or be killed. Hurricanes that can level cities. Earthquakes that split continents. Animals that hunt humans for sport. We're the species that survived it all," Lisa said quietly. "Not just survived. We conquered it. We turned a planet that tries to kill us every day into our home." The room was quiet as everyone considered the implications. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting. Fighting the environment, fighting wild animals, fighting each other. War was not something humans had to learn. It was something they were born knowing. Ron pulled up tactical displays showing human weapon systems. The aliens have no idea what they're about to see. Chemical weapons that can kill entire ecosystems. Nuclear devices that can crack planets. Biological warfare that turns an enemy's own body against them. "It's just our standard equipment," Amy said. "If we're dealing with a threat this big, we break out the experimental weapons. The ones we built but hoped we'd never have to use." Kate made her decision. "We're going. All of us. Every ship, every Marine, every weapon we have. This isn't just about helping aliens. If this swarm wins, they'll eventually find Earth. Better to stop them now, while we have alien allies." Jake started issuing orders. "I want the entire fleet ready for jump in 72 hours. Full war loadout. Enough supplies for a year-long campaign? And send a message back to the aliens. Tell them help is coming. What should we tell them about force strength? Lisa asked. Kate thought about it. The aliens were expecting maybe a few hundred volunteers. They had no frame of reference for what a human military response looked like. Tell them Earth is sending aid. Don't give them numbers. Let it be a surprise. As the meeting broke up, staff officers hurried off to prepare for humanity's first interstellar war. The shipyards went into overdrive, loading weapons and supplies onto every available vessel. Marines said goodbye to families, not knowing if they would return from a war fought light years from home. Dr. Alan Cross, the fleet's chief medical officer, spent hours studying the alien physiology data, trying to understand how to treat wounded beings made of crystal, gas, and energy. His medical bay was stocked with everything from antibiotics to radiation treatments. Commander Nick Hayes led his fighter pilots through final training runs, practicing combat maneuvers in asteroid fields and nebula clouds. They had trained their whole lives for aerial combat, but never in the vacuum of space around alien worlds. Sergeant Maria Santos drilled her Marines in boarding actions and urban warfare, adapting their tactics for the unknown environments they might encounter. Her soldiers were ready to fight in any atmosphere, on any world, against any enemy. Within 3 days, the human defense fleet was ready to depart. 300 warships formed up in space around Luna Base, their hulls bristling with weapons that could sterilize continents. 50,000 of humanity's finest warriors waited in the holds, eager to test their skills against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, peaceful aliens were dying while they waited for help that might never come. They had asked the galaxy for aid, not knowing they had contacted the one species that considered warfare an art form. The jump drives powered up, opening holes in space itself. The human defense fleet disappeared into the void, carrying death to the enemies of peace. Behind them, Earth continued its ancient dance around the sun. Unaware that its children were about to introduce the galaxy to the concept of human warfare, the aliens had asked for aid. What they were about to receive was something far more terrible and beautiful than they could imagine. The human fleet dropped out of jump space at the edge of the Zephyrian home system. What they found was hell unfolding in the darkness between planets. The Vorthok swarm had arrived 3 days earlier. Massive bioships the size of moons drifted through space, their surfaces crawling with smaller craft that looked like flying insects. The beautiful crystal cities on Zephyria's 3 inhabited worlds were under attack. Streams of organic matter flowed up from the planets into the hungry mouths of the swarm ships. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the horror through the main screen. Beside him, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park was analyzing the alien life forms they were seeing for the first time. "My God," Lisa whispered. The reports didn't do it justice. Those bioships are literally eating the planets. Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice crackled over the communication system from her command ship. "All vessels, this is Fleet Admiral Sullivan. We are witnessing genocide. These creatures are consuming an entire civilization. This ends now." The Zephyrian Defense Fleet, what little remained of it, was scattered around their home world. Their ships were beautiful works of art, made of the same crystal material as their builders. They fired beams of harmonic energy that could shatter asteroids, but barely scratch the armored hides of the swarm. Ship's Ambassador Keth 9 Resonance was on the Zephyrian command ship when his sensors detected the new arrivals. At first he felt hope, then confusion. The ships that had just appeared were nothing like any vessel in the Galactic database. "Commander Veltu Harmony," Keth said to his military leader, "scan those ships. What species built them?" Veltu ran the analysis, and his crystalline body flickered with surprise. "Sir, the metal composition is unknown. The energy signatures don't match any galactic civilization. And sir, they're armed with weapons we've never seen before." Before Keth could respond, a communication signal reached their ship. The translation system struggled with the new language, but finally produced words. "Zephyrian vessels, this is Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. We're here to help. Please move to a safe distance. We're about to engage the enemy." Keth had never heard the word human before, but something about the calm, Cold tone of the message sent chills through his crystal structure. These beings spoke about battle like others discussed the weather. Commander. Nick Hayes launched his fighter wing without waiting for formal orders. 100 human fighters streaked toward the nearest swarm bioship, their engines leaving trails of blue fire in space. The Vorthok defenders moved to intercept, expecting another easy meal. Their biological fighters were fast and deadly, adapted from flying creatures they had consumed on a dozen worlds. They had never lost an aerial battle. They had never fought humans before. Nick's fighters hit the swarm with weapons that turned space itself into a weapon. Plasma cannons that burned hotter than stars. Missiles that could track their targets through dimensional shifts. Kinetic rounds that punched through armor like it was paper. The biological fighters of the Vorthok tried to swarm the humans, using tactics that had worked for millions of years, but human pilots had been trained in Earth's atmosphere where a single mistake meant death. They flew through clouds of enemy fire like they were dancing, their movements impossible to predict. "Target the big one," Nick called over the radio, pointing his fighter toward a bioship the size of a small city. "Show these bugs what a real predator looks like." The human fighters dove toward the massive swarm ship, dodging the defensive fire that could have destroyed entire fleets. They moved like a school of sharks, each pilot covering the others, working together with a coordination that seemed telepathic. Nick armed his experimental weapons and smiled grimly. The weapon had been designed to crack asteroids for mining, but humans had found a better use for it. Target locked. Fox 3. The missile that left his fighter contained technology that the swarm had never encountered. It didn't just explode. It created a small black hole that existed for exactly 0.3 seconds, long enough to tear a hole completely through the bioship. The swarm ship died, screaming, its biological systems failing as atmosphere vented into space. The sound it made was broadcast across all frequencies, a wail of pain and confusion that echoed through the system. On the Zephyrian command ship, Ambassador Keth watched in amazement as a single human. The fighter had destroyed a bioship that had taken their entire defense fleet hours to damage. "What kind of beings are these humans?" Vel2 asked, his form flickering with patterns of awe and fear. The answer came as the main human battle fleet engaged the swarm. Admiral Jake Morrison's ships moved into attack formation with a precision that was beautiful and terrifying. Each vessel knew exactly where to be and what to do. "All ships, weapons free," Jake's voice carried across the fleet channels. "Remember, these things have killed billions of innocent people. Show them what happens when you mess with someone under human protection." The human warships opened fire with weapons that had been designed to fight other humans. Nuclear-tipped missiles that could crack continents. Particle beams that could burn through planetary shields. Chemical weapons that would make entire systems uninhabitable. But it was the tactics that really shocked the watching aliens. The humans didn't just fight. They hunted. Captain Ron Baker's heavy cruisers moved to cut off the swarm's retreat while Colonel Amy Ross's destroyers flanked the enemy formation. They worked together like a pack of wolves, each ship playing its part in bringing down prey much larger than themselves. The swarm had consumed 1,000 civilizations, but they had never encountered anything like this. Their bioships were designed to overwhelm peaceful species with raw numbers and biological horror, against humans who had been fighting and killing since they lived in caves. The swarm's advantages meant nothing. Sergeant Maria Santos was watching the battle from the Marine transport ship when her commander gave the order she had been waiting for. "We have swarm ships with life support systems. Intelligence wants prisoners for interrogation. Boarding parties prepare for hostile contact." Maria grinned as she checked her weapons. Her squad was armed with guns that fired explosive rounds, armor that could survive in deep space, and enough firepower to level a building. They were about to board an alien ship full of creatures that ate civilizations for breakfast. "Remember," she told her squad, "these things killed billions of peaceful aliens. They're monsters. But we're humans. We're the monsters that other monsters have nightmares about." The boarding pods launched from the human ships, small armored vessels designed to punch through enemy hulls and deliver Marines directly into combat. Maria's pod slammed into a swarm. Bioship with enough force to shake the entire structure, the doors blew open, and humans poured into the alien ship. The Vorthok defenders rushed to meet them, expecting to overwhelm the boarding party with sheer numbers and biological weapons. Instead, they met Maria Santos and her Marines. The battle inside the bioship was brief and one-sided. The Vorthok had claws that could tear through metal and acid that could dissolve bone. The humans had shotguns that fired depleted uranium rounds and combat knives that were monomolecular sharp. More importantly, the humans fought with a savagery that the swarm couldn't understand. These beings enjoyed combat. They laughed as they killed and showed no fear of death. When one Marine was injured, his squad mates didn't retreat. They got angry. Within an hour, the battle for the Zephyrian system was over. The Vorthok swarm was in full retreat, their bioships burning as they fled into deep space. The human fleet held the field, their weapons still tracking the escaping enemies. On the Zephyrian command ship, Ambassador Keth stood in stunned silence. His people had been saved, but he was beginning to understand that they had been rescued by something more terrifying than what they had been saved from. The humans had come to help. But the way they helped was to become more efficient killers than the killers themselves. 3 weeks after the battle for Zephyria, the Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. The reports coming in from human-controlled space were disturbing the peaceful civilizations more than the original swarm attacks had. Council leader Vex Prime's silver branches trembled as he read the latest intelligence reports. The humans had not stopped after saving the Zephyrian system. They were hunting the Vorthok swarm across the galaxy with a patience and determination that made other species nervous. They have established military bases on 7 different worlds, reported. Junior Clerk Zip7, who had been promoted to Senior Intelligence Analyst after his discovery of the humans, worlds that we classified as uninhabitable death traps. The Nebulae representative floated closer to examine the data. Surely there must be some mistake. These planets have toxic atmospheres and temperatures that would kill most life forms in minutes. Ambassador Linda Scott of the Human Diplomatic Corps had arrived at the Council Station 3 days earlier. She was humanity's first ambassador to galactic civilization, a cheerful woman in her 50s, who seemed harmless enough. Her presence had initially calmed the Council's fears about their new allies. Those fears were returning quickly. "There's no mistake," Linda said with a smile that somehow made the aliens more uncomfortable. "Kepler 44-b has surface, temperatures of -40 degrees, and an atmosphere that's 80% sulfur dioxide. We call it a challenging environment. Our Marines have set up a forward base there to track swarm movements in the outer rim." The Depths representative spoke through her water tank with bubbling concern. "How do your people survive in such conditions?" "Environmental suits and sealed habitats," Linda replied. "It's not much different from our Antarctic research stations back on Earth. Cold, hostile, but manageable." What Linda didn't mention was that the Antarctic was considered one of the most dangerous places on Earth, where temperatures could drop to -90 degrees and storms could kill an unprepared human in hours. To her, this was normal information. To the aliens, it was proof that humans came from a nightmare world. Captain Steve Morrison, Admiral Jake's younger brother, was currently establishing the most troubling base of all. His Deep Space Reconnaissance Squadron had found an asteroid field that the Galactic Council had marked as impassable. The gravitational fields were so chaotic that computer navigation systems failed, and the rocks moved so unpredictably that ships were crushed within hours of entering. Steve had looked at the asteroid field and seen the perfect hiding spot for a military base. The tactical advantages are obvious. He reported to Fleet Command. Complete sensor cover, multiple escape routes, and natural defenses that would stop any conventional attack. We can monitor swarm movements across 3 star systems from here. His engineers had spent 2 weeks installing a full military station inside the largest asteroid. They used controlled nuclear explosions to hollow out the interior and gravity generators to create livable spaces. The work was done by humans in spacesuits, moving through environments that would terrify most galactic species. Major Carol White was in charge of the construction project. She had previously overseen the building of military bases on Mars. where sandstorms could strip flesh from bone and radiation levels would kill an unprotected human in days. Working inside an asteroid field was just another day at the office for her. Base construction is ahead of schedule, she reported. We've got living space for 5,000 personnel and enough firepower to stop a swarm fleet. The asteroid field provides perfect camouflage. What worried the Galactic Council most was not what the humans were building, but how they were building it. Every human base was designed for war, not defense, not peacekeeping, but aggressive warfare on a scale that peaceful civilizations couldn't understand. The breaking point came when Dr. Paul Green gave his presentation to the Council about Earth itself. Paul was a xenobiologist who had been sent to help other species understand human culture. His job was to make humanity seem less threatening to their new galactic neighbors. He failed completely. Earth is what we call a Class 12 hostile environment, Paul began, showing images of Earth's surface on the main display. The planet is 70% covered by oceans that contain predators like this. The screen showed a great white shark attacking a seal. The Zephyrian representatives flickered with patterns of terror as they watched a creature the size of a small spacecraft tear apart its prey with casual efficiency. Of course, marine predators are only one concern, Paul continued cheerfully. Land-based megafauna includes creatures like this. Grizzly bear appeared on screen, standing 12 feet tall and weighing over 1,000 pounds. The bear was shown fishing for salmon, casually catching fish that weighed more than most galactic species. Bears are generally peaceful and less threatened, Paul explained, though they can run faster than most human vehicles and have been known to break into our homes looking for food. The council members were making sounds of distress. But Paul was just getting started. Then we have our reptilian species, he said, showing footage of a saltwater crocodile. These creatures have remained unchanged for millions of years because they achieved perfect efficiency as predators. They can grow up to 20 feet long and have bite forces that can crush small vehicles. The luminance beings made of pure energy actually dimmed with shock. Your people live alongside these monsters? Paul looked confused. Well, yes. They're part of our ecosystem. Most of them are more afraid of us than we are of them. Humans are the apex predator on Earth. He said it so casually that it took a moment for the translation systems to process the statement. When they did, several council members required medical attention. You're saying that on a planet full of these killing machines, humans are the most dangerous species? Vexprim asked weakly. Oh yes, Paul said with pride. We've hunted most large predators to near extinction. Not because they threatened us, really, but because we needed their territory for farming and cities. The final shock came when Paul showed them human children. Human offspring begin combat training at an early age. Through play activities, he explained. Showing video of children playing tag, hide-and-seek, and dodgeball. These games teach hunting skills, evasion tactics, and projectile combat. To human eyes, it was just kids having fun in a park. To the galactic civilizations, it looked like military training for tiny predators. The young ones practice warfare. The Depths representative asked in horror, "Call it playing," Paul said. Children naturally develop the skills they'll need as adults. Competition, strategy, physical coordination, it's all preparation for adult life. Commander Julie Adams was watching the council session from the human embassy. She'd been tasked with setting up training programs for alien militaries, teaching them human concepts of warfare. After watching Paul's presentation, she realized her job had just become much harder. No wonder they're terrified of us, she said to her aide. We've been trying to explain human military doctrine to species that consider tag a form of combat training. The final item on Paul's presentation was human history. He showed them images of ancient battles, medieval warfare, and modern conflicts. The progression of human weapons from clubs and stones to nuclear weapons that could destroy entire planets. Humans have been in a state of continuous warfare for our entire recorded history, Paul explained. We've fought over territory, resources, ideas, and sometimes just because we didn't like each other. It's made us very good at it. The council session ended in stunned silence. The species that they had contacted for help were not just warriors. They were evolved killers from a world so dangerous that it had created. the most lethal predators the galaxy had ever seen, and these predators had children who played games that would be considered military exercises by most civilizations. As the council members left the meeting, each wondered the same thing. Had they saved themselves from the Vorthok swarm? Or had they simply traded one monster for another that was far more intelligent and dangerous? In the human embassy, Ambassador Linda Scott finished her daily report to Earth. Her message was simple. The galaxy was full of peaceful species who had never known real war. They were grateful for human protection, but they were also beginning to understand what they had invited into their civilized corner of the universe. The humans had come to help. But help, it turned out, came with teeth and claws, and the instincts of apex predators who had never learned to stop hunting. The war ended not with a great battle, but with a surrender that shocked the entire galaxy. General Tom Richards stood on the bridge of his command ship. Looking down at the Vorthok Queen Mine through the main screen, the massive creature floated in a containment field, its biological form pulsing with patterns that the translation computers identified as submission and fear. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Vorthok swarm had asked to surrender. "Repeat your message," Tom said, his voice cold and professional. The Queen Mine's response came through multiple frequencies, a mixture of chemical signals and biological sounds that human computers had learned to translate. "We yield to the Deathbringers. We accept defeat. We will withdraw from all consumed territories and return to the dark space between galaxies." Behind Tom, his staff officers watched in amazement. The swarm had consumed civilizations for millions of years. They had never shown mercy, never retreated, never admitted defeat. The concept of surrender was supposed to be alien to their biological programming, but they had never encountered humans before. The campaign had lasted 6 months. What started as a rescue mission had become a galaxy-wide hunt that ended with the complete demoralization of an enemy that had terrorized the stars for eons. It wasn't just the human weapons that had broken the swarm. Though those had been devastating enough, it was the way humans fought. They pursued fleeing enemies across star systems. They set traps that took weeks to spring. They studied swarm behavior and learned to predict their movements better than the swarm could. Predict themselves, most terrifying of all. The humans seemed to enjoy it, Commander Julie. Adams had spent the last 3 months training alien military forces in human combat doctrine. The results were disturbing to everyone involved, including Julie herself. It's the problem, she explained to Admiral Jake Morrison during their final briefing, is that most galactic species can't think like predators. When I try to teach them ambush tactics, they worry about being fair to the enemy. When I explain flanking maneuvers, they ask if it's ethical to attack from multiple directions. Jake nodded grimly. He had seen the same issue throughout the campaign. Allied forces would hesitate at critical moments, worried about causing unnecessary suffering to an enemy that was trying to eat them. "What about the Zephyrians?" Jake asked. "They've been fighting alongside us the longest." Julie's expression grew troubled. "They're learning. That's what worries me. Ambassador Keth came to me yesterday asking about chemical weapons. He wanted to know if it was acceptable to poison swarm food supplies." The idea of the peaceful, musical Zephyrians considering chemical warfare was deeply unsettling. But it was happening across the galaxy. Species that had never known violence were learning from humanity's example. The surrender ceremony took place in the Galactic Council chambers. Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered to witness the end of the swarm threat. The Queen Mind was brought before the Council in chains that could have held a battleship. Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan stood before the assembled aliens, her dress uniform spotless and her expression unreadable. At her side stood Ambassador Linda Scott, who had become the unofficial spokesperson for human military policy. "The Vorthok swarm surrenders unconditionally," Kate announced. "They will withdraw to the galactic edge and remain there. Any attempt to return to civilized space will be met with immediate and total retaliation." Council leader Vex Prim spoke for the gathered civilizations. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, we thank the humans for their aid in this crisis. Your assistance has saved billions of lives." There was polite applause, but Kate could see the fear in the alien faces. They were grateful, yes, but they were also terrified of what they had unleashed. The truth was that the war had changed humanity, as much as it had changed the galaxy. Earth's military had tasted victory on an interstellar scale. They had proven themselves against an enemy that had consumed civilizations. The experience had been intoxicating back on Earth. Recruitment offices were flooded with volunteers wanting to join the military. The war against the swarm had made humanity feel powerful and important in a way they had never experienced before. For the first time in human history, they were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for others. It was a dangerous feeling. Dr. Alan Cross, the fleet's chief medical officer, had noticed the change in his patients. Human soldiers were requesting extended tours of duty. Rather than rotation back to Earth, they spoke about the civilized galaxy, the way missionaries talked about. Unconverted territories. They want to stay and help. Alan reported to Kate during a private meeting. But their idea of help involves teaching peaceful species how to fight wars. The problem was spreading beyond the military. Human civilian contractors were arriving in alien space, offering their services as security consultants, weapons designers, and military advisors. They were welcomed by species who had realized that their peaceful civilizations needed protection. What the aliens didn't understand was that protection from humans came with a price. Captain Steve Morrison's asteroid base had become the headquarters for human intelligence operations across the galaxy. His reconnaissance teams monitored not just swarm activity, but all movement in their assigned sectors. They knew more about galactic shipping routes, resource distribution, and population centers than most governments. Information was power, and humans were very good at collecting information, Major. Carol White's construction teams were building defensive installations on dozens of worlds. The alien governments welcomed the bases, believing they needed protection from any remaining swarm forces. They didn't realize they were allowing humanity to establish a permanent military presence across the galaxy. Each base was equipped with weapons that could control entire star systems. Each base was staffed by humans, who had been trained from birth to see threats everywhere they looked. The final shock came when children from Earth began arriving in alien space. The human colonial education program was presented as a cultural exchange. Human families volunteering to live among alien civilizations, sharing knowledge and building friendships between species. What actually arrived were human children, who played games that looked like military exercises to alien observers. 8-year-old Billy Peterson was playing hide-and-seek with Zephyrian youngsters when Ambassador Kethfi realized that the human child was unconsciously teaching stealth and evasion tactics. 10-year-old Sarah Kim organized to capture the flag games that were indistinguishable from small unit tactics training. "They're not trying to militarize our children," Keth reported to the council. "It's worse than that. They're naturally teaching warfare through play. Their young ones can't help but pass on predatory skills." The Galactic Council faced a terrible realization. They had asked for help against monsters and received aid from something far more dangerous than what they had been saved from. The Vorthok swarm consumed civilizations. But humans were teaching civilizations to consume each other. The final message in the council chords came from Ambassador Keth9 Resonance of Zephyria. "We are safe now from the swarm. Our worlds are protected by human bases and human weapons. Our children learn human games and human songs. We have been saved. But we understand now why the humans were not yet members of the Galactic Council. We sent our plea for help. They are not conquerors in the traditional sense. They do not need to invade our worlds or enslave our people. They simply make us like them. Our young ones play war games now. Our leaders study human military history. Our scientists develop weapons based on human designs. We call it learning from our protectors. The humans call it civilization. We asked for aid against monsters. We received protectors who are teaching us to become monsters ourselves. And the most terrifying part is that we are grateful for the lesson." Admiral Jake Morrison read the message from his office on Luna Base. Outside his window, the shipyards were busier than ever. New construction, new weapons, new ships designed for exploration and expansion. The galaxy was at peace now. It's protected by human military bases and human technology. Trade routes were secure, colonies were safe, and civilizations were learning to defend themselves. They were also learning to be more like humanity. The transformation was subtle but irreversible. Species that had never known warfare were developing military doctrines. Peaceful civilizations were building weapons and training soldiers. The galaxy was becoming more human with each passing day, and humanity was ready for whatever came next. They had proven themselves as protectors and teachers. They had found their place among the stars, not as explorers or diplomats, but as the species others called when something needed to be killed. The humans had come when called. They had answered the plea for aid. They had saved the galaxy from the swarm. What they had given in return was something far more lasting than simple rescue. They had given the galaxy the gift of human nature itself. The children of Earth were playing in parks again, laughing and running their eternal games of chase and capture. Alien visitors watched from a safe distance. Studying the way human young ones unconsciously practiced the arts of war, they were learning. They all were learning, and humanity was an excellent teacher.